What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Uncensored Critic podcast. Thank you for tuning in. As always, I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time. As always, this really means the world to me. So thank you for that. Today, we welcome along another very special guest, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome to the show Miss Dani Arlington. And Dani, let's take a moment to introduce her and the work that she's done. She trained at Mountview and at the HB studio in New York City. She has credits on TV such as Doctors and The Dumping Ground for the BBC. Music video, If My Heart Aches by Koru. Music video can be found on YouTube. Go check it out. For film, she has appeared on How Not to Disappear Completely and The Silent Accomplice and Soulboy. And you might also have seen her on television in a commercial as a mum in a Morrison's Christmas ad back in 2016. For stage, not only is she an actress, but she's also passionate about directing as well. She has been the assistant director on Darling at the Hope Theatre, which won a Standing Ovation Award, The Fulstow Boys by Gordon Steele, and The Speaker with the Live Theatre Company in Newcastle. And as an actress, she has appeared in Tiny Beautiful Things, directed by Harry Burton, who's been on the show, and as most notably recently in the theatrical event of 2022, which was the understudy to a certain Miss Jodie Comer in Prima Facie in the West End at the Harold Pinter Theatre and on Broadway at the Golden Theatre. So Dani was waiting in the wings to see if Jodie fancied an off night to carry on the role as Tessa, the lawyer who defends people in sexual assault cases, and ultimately has a rather unfortunate experience which helps to apply her law and her knowledge to help bring a certain subject to justice. But anyway, enough from me. Dani, hello.
Hi.
How are you doing? You all right?
I'm really good. Yes.
Oh, good. No, the pleasure's all mine. Thank you for being here today. It means the world to me that you taking the time to chat. So welcome, Dani. Thanks for coming on today. So we start with the starter question for every guest, which is, where did it all start for you, the love of acting? Where did it come from?
I think weirdly, I kind of fell into it. I went through school not really knowing what I wanted to do. Didn't really act that much, although I remember telling a lot of my teachers that that's what I wanted to do, and would autograph things for them to be like, save that for when I'm famous. And then I left school, and one of my best friends was doing a performing arts course, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I just kind of tagged along with her, really. I was like, okay, that sounds fun, I'll come. And then while we were there, Gordon Steele, who's a writer-director from Teesside, came in to our college to direct one of our performances. And he also was writing professionally for Hull Truck Theatre at the time. And he asked me if I'd like to audition for one of the roles for Hull Truck for this huge kind of like UK tour of his new play. But he made it very clear that, this was purely for just the experience. I wouldn't be getting the job. It was just kind of the experience of auditioning.
Yeah.
So then I auditioned, and then I ended up, they gave it to me, luckily. And then, so that was my first, I kind of learned on the job, because I think there was 5 of us in the cast. A lot of the actors were much older than me. I was 18 at the time. So I kind of learnt from them, really, and just like went touring around the whole of the UK, and then just completely fell in love with acting and theatre. And yeah,
amazing. So I know you mentioned in the introduction, so you trained at Mountview, but you said something about learning on the job there. What would you say was the biggest lessons you learned on that tour when you went around the country?
I think it's really difficult, I think, in theatre to especially when you're doing a long run of something, to kind of keep it alive. And that's a challenge in itself. You're not just kind of going through the motions every night. And I obviously hadn't been in a long running production, so I just had no experience of that. And then I think just talking to the other actors and like hearing their stories, and you kind of just get immersed into that world. And I'd never kind of spent that much time with actors. Like, acting wasn't really a thing where I came from. I didn't know any actors. I wasn't really, that was like a whole new world to me. So yeah, like I think, yeah, you just learn from the other actors and how they would tackle, you know, certain notes, or, you know, it was just kind of observing and absorbing all of their knowledge, basically.
So tell me about your training at Mountview, because you trained in London and in New York. What was the journey like across your training?
Yeah, really good. I mean, I was lucky enough to get a few jobs, and then I kind of got to 26 and I thought I always wanted to go to drama school, and I thought if I don't do it now,
Mm.
I'm never going to do it. So I applied, got into Mountview, lucky enough to get a Dada because I didn't have £30,000 in my back pocket. So that was very lucky. And apparently now this is a very bad thing. Apparently the Dadas, you can only get them if you're under 25.
Dada, what is that?
It's a dance and drama award, which pays your fees, basically.
Oh, right. So it's like a scholarship in a way or something.
Yeah, so it's a scholarship. But yeah, annoyingly, if I was to apply now when I was 26, I don't think I would actually be able to go to drama school, which is very sad. And then, yeah, had a great time at Mountview. We were in Wood Green, so it was kind of before it moved to Peckham. They're in a new, beautiful building now in Peckham.
Beautiful, yeah.
But yeah, I loved it. We had a great time. And then really randomly, my partner after that was moving to New York to help set up an office there. And so while I was there, I just thought, what can I do to kind of help my training along? And went and auditioned at the HB studio and did a screen acting course there, which was incredible, like really different from kind of UK training. So it was like good to have both angles, really.
Yeah, because I went to drama school last year, and I think one of the biggest challenges for me was learning how to do it for screen. Because I know we talk a lot about theatre today, and like they always teach you to reach the back of the house or the top of the house and everything.
Yeah,
Screen, you've got to bring it all the way back and make it really small while still feeling everything in here and in your whole body. So, what was your experience of learning that?
It is such a different. I just think there's more differences than people actually tell you at drama school, you know, like, and I think for me, working in TV, it's having that confidence to kind of ask the director like what shot it is, and do you know what I mean, all of those things, because when you haven't worked in that environment, it just seems terrifying, and you don't know what you're going to look like, and you don't know if you're being too big or too small, or you know, it can be quite daunting. So yeah, it was really nice to do that in America, especially because I feel like a lot of the actors who were on that course in America hadn't even been to the theatre, which I thought was wild that they were, you know, wanting to be actors. But I guess it's just they knew that that's the medium they wanted to work in, and they wanted to work in film and TV, and that's what they focused on. But yeah, it was really, really helpful to just be constantly doing scenes, watching them back, and, you know, being able to like see yourself. I just think you don't get that at drama school. You do get a little bit of TV training, but it's not as intense. So yeah, it was really helpful.
Yeah, that's definitely something you learn on the job, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you learn how to you notice when to pull things back and when to like drop certain lines at a certain point whilst keeping up.
Yeah.
The biggest challenge for me was like I kept the reaction, well, the natural reaction was to keep like wanting to give more, like widen the eyes or do this or like that kind of thing. I'll be like, I'm really emoting now, and they're like, no, okay, bring it down.
Yeah.
And I'm going, well, I'm not acting now. I'm not moving any muscles in my face. What am I supposed to be doing? And it's like,
yeah, it feels so strange, especially when you've just been doing like a huge theatre production, and you just think, I'm not doing anything.
I'm not emoting anything. I need to do something. But as bad as you are, you know, I think the beauty of screen is that, you know, when you trust the words a lot more and really get that across, and then somehow you can be, I think it helps if you've got good writing, of course.
100%.
Yeah, because I don't know, have you had any experiences where you've done something where you've been given the script and you're going, what the fuck? How do I get this?
I mean, definitely, you know, for some auditions
that
I've done, like when you need to do like self tips and stuff, you're just like, oh, this feels really weird. but not in any actual jobs, I would say.
Mm.
But still, I mean, to be honest, I still feel like I'm on a massive learning curve with, you know, TV and screen, because I've done so much theatre, even though in my head I feel like I'm a TV actor, because I feel like I'm still quite small for, like, you know, I don't feel like I'm like, I don't know. But yeah, I still feel like I'm on that learning journey, but doing more and more, you know, self-tapes and classes and stuff. You just get, it's a technique basically, isn't it?
Yeah, I think over the last couple of years, I think this self-tape revolution has just exploded, obviously, since the lockdowns and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and I think as scary as it is watching yourself back, you're like, okay, like this is what I do. Yep. You're like, oh, is that how I talk? Is that how oh my God. Okay, right. Just get on with it. Get on with it. Come on. You know, learning just to iron out. There's no time for like this imposter syndrome or anything. You just got to get on with it and do it, right?
Yeah, especially when you're on just like tight deadlines. You're like, okay, let's just get the job done. This has to be back in a couple of hours.
Yeah, I've got 2 hours. What? No, not 2 hours.
Yeah.
Get it to you now. Okay. Because we're going to jump into Prima Facie in just a second. But tell me about your experience as a mum in the Morrison's Christmas ad. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh, it was so much fun. Yeah, oh, I loved that job. I got given the most beautiful little kid as like, who was playing the kid, and I was his mum.
Yeah.
He was just hilarious, so we laughed like the whole time. But yeah, it was really nice. I've never done you know, I think that was the first kind of like big commercial that I'd done. And yeah, I had to carry this giant heavy turkey to the table about 20 times. My arms were, I think I got some muscles that day. But yeah, it was really good. It was really nice. And you know, it was such a lovely ad as well, that, you know, I love Christmas ads. That's what, you know, that's how you know it's Christmas, isn't it?
Exactly. You see the Coke advert and you know it's Christmas.
Yeah. The John Lewis one, they always do a good one, don't they?
I do, yeah. I mean, what was because you must have, did you shoot that, like, must have been earlier in the year? Like, was it like September?
I think it was September, yeah.
Yeah. So what was it like being at home that Christmas when your face just popped up every now and then on TV?
I know, it was crazy. My husband was just like, "Why are you always there?" Yeah, it felt really strange.
It's all for the art though, isn't it? It's all for the art. Cool, fantastic. So let's jump into the bulk of today's conversation, which is your work on Prima Facie. You were the understudy to Miss Comer. And I read from the article, and the article you did on Spotlight about life as an understudy. Guys, go check it out if you're on Spotlight. It's a lovely article about the importance of understudies. You talked about how you know, there's a lot of value in being an understudy and everything, but we'll get onto that in just a second. So let's shoot right back to the beginning. Where did you first hear about this job? Did your agent give you a call, or how did you hear about it?
Yeah, I mean, really lucky for me. I went to Mountview at the same time as the assistant director. And I think they were making a list of people to audition. And very kindly, she had remembered me from Mountview and added my name to the list of potentials. So yeah, I got an audition, and I didn't really know what to expect. I mean, I've never done an understudy job before, so I just didn't really know what it was going to be like. But I think they sent a couple of scenes from the play, and as soon as I read the scenes, I just thought, wow, this writing is insane. It's just such a beautiful thing when you read something and you instantly connect to it. And I just felt like, oh, okay, I know how to do this. You know, well, not that I know how to do it, but I can connect to it.
Yeah.
So that was really nice. So yeah, and then went along to the audition and just had an amazing time.
Yeah, but what was the audition like? I mean, I would imagine they got you to say some things. Of course they did. But you know, what was it like walking into the room? What was the whole experience of auditioning for it like?
It was really lovely. And you know what? I told Justin Martin, our director, and Jane Moriarty, the assistant director, and James Beam, the producer, who were all in the room. I said this to them afterwards, because when you walk into an audition room and you get a great energy and feel supported, it's transformational for your performance. And I remember we did one scene, and then Justin, was giving me a bit of direction, and we did it again. And this time he was like, okay, I want you to be drunk. You're in a club, you're drunk. And bless Jane, the assistant director, was kind of like sitting behind the desk, like, woo, like just giving me a bit of atmosphere instead of, what it's like. You can walk into these auditions sometimes and it's kind of like blank face and it's terrifying. But I think, I felt completely at ease, which was, it was lovely.
Amazing. So how quickly did you hear that you got the job?
I can't really remember. I think I went back for a second casting maybe a week later.
Mm-hmm.
And then I feel like I found out not long after that. So it was all it was quite quick for that process, really.
Oh,
yeah.
Amazing. So who is Tessa to you?
Tessa is what I'm completely inspired by this character, because she's a working class girl, like myself, who has kind of battled her way up through a kind of profession that normally she might not be in. She's, she wants to be a barrister, and she gets to the top of her game, and she really has to. I think I understand I don't know, I felt a bit of this when I went to drama school, when it's kind of like there's a lot of people who come from much more money when you go to drama school, and I'd never really been in that environment before. And so you kind of, I don't know, you feel a bit inferior, so you kind of posh yourself up a little bit to be like, to try and like fit in. And I think that it's a very similar trajectory for Tessa joining the world of law. And I think that, she's really clever, she's, quick-witted, she's smart, she's fast, she's just kind of on it, which takes her to the top of her game. And then, she is a victim then of sexual assault, and the kind of bravery it takes to actually then go through the system that is kind of against you in that scenario. And I just, I learned so much from that character, and I just, she's great.
Yeah, she's inspiring. I think when you were talking about coming to drama school, she comes from working class background, and she meets people there who have got money and lots of it. And I'm reminded of the scene where where Tessa talks about on the first day, she sits next to someone and she goes, "What's your name?" "Benedict." Of course his name's Benedict.
I love that line.
Yeah.
I remember the conversation of like, what should he be called? We were like, was just hilarious. Like every day it was like we'd try out different names, which was funny.
Yeah, I must warn you guys, but if any of you haven't seen it, there are going to be a few spoilers in this episode, so if just be prepared. And another one, just warn you, was how did you one of my favorite scenes in it was when they go to the pub. Well, where Tessa goes to the pub shortly after that. I remember Jodie used to pick up her glass. I'm not sure if you did the same thing. She had some water on stage. "We head to the pub," and just chuck the glass back. And then she gets up and does a lot of like dancing. I mean, when she started doing the Macarena, I was just like, okay, I can relate to that. That's great. But what was your routine? Was it the same, or did you do something different?
No, I had different moves. I think I did throw in the Macarena.
Yeah.
But I mean, Jodie can dance. Do you know what I mean? Her moves were like, her robot was amazing. Yeah. I was just like, but when we were rehearsing, Jane and I, the assistant director, would just try different things all the time. So sometimes it would change. Depending on how
what did you do? What were your moves?
I did do a robot.
Hmm.
and then I did some kind of like funky chicken thing.
Right.
And then I think I ended up, I mean, I don't even know what you would call this. I don't even know what it would be. But I ended up kind of like on the floor, like almost like I
The
don't know.
Wait, was it the worm or something?
No, I imagine doing the worm on that table. No, I just couldn't.
Oh, okay,
I
yeah.
don't know.
All the lights and everything just going psh, all over the floor.
Yeah, yeah. No, I definitely wasn't brave enough to do the worm. Yeah. But yeah, I just kind of went with it.
Yeah,
But
no,
there was a robot and there was a Macarena. There was.
okay, well, at least we've got the importance. We've got the
Yeah.
essentials in there, which is good. So, so Tessa, she goes on this wild journey. Of course, like going, accomplishments. Coming from a working class background to getting to law school. Getting into this huge, like, established area of her life, which is going to be successful. And then, unfortunately, something very unfortunate and very serious happens to her
Mm-hmm.
following that, where I've forgotten the guy's name. What's the name of the fella she goes home with that night? His name?
I can't believe this has actually left my brain. Maybe that's a like subconscious thing that I don't want to think about it.
Possibly.
Um,
Anyway, we can just say
Julian.
Julian. Yes, thank you. And what happens. And the rest of the play is her way of trying to get justice and find justice. And I think Susie Miller, the writer, she did a very good job of showing that even today there is
Mhm.
still some disparity and some prejudice in this business. What were the conversations like in the rehearsal room when you approached like that scene and that sort of area of the play?
Um, what do you mean specifically the actual sexual assault scene?
No, no. I mean, well, we could talk about that if you're comfortable with it. But I mean, like specifically after that, when you're talking about how Tessa essentially doesn't get justice for what happened to her, was there conversations around that even today that there are still?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of things where Susie talks about this so well and so much better than I would. But I mean, having Susie in the rehearsal room as well was just like absolute gold dust
Oh,
because
usually.
she used to be a barrister, so she knows the law inside out and just yeah, I mean, to be honest, the figures are shocking, like 1 in 3 women in the UK are sexually assaulted. And if you look at, the amount of those cases that actually make it through, through the police, through the CPS, to a court, to an actual trial, to then, someone being sent to jail, I think it's like 0 point something percent. It's
Yeah,
insane. So it's it's very harrowing, and it just kind of makes you realize that, I mean, the huge point about the play is something has to change, and
mhm.
it's true because that doesn't add up. There isn't all of these women lying about these sexual assaults. It doesn't make any sense. So I think the system is still massively flawed, and I think that Prima Facie has, in its own way, sparked that conversation and hopefully is making some kind of change. I know that I think judges now in Ireland and the UK have to watch the NT live of Prima Facie,
Oh wow.
um, which is amazing. Just to see it from that perspective and to understand it from that perspective, I think is huge for a player to do that. Is just incredible. But
Mm.
yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of work to be done. There's um yeah, it's definitely not, we're not there yet.
Yeah, no, there's more to be done, I think. Yeah, and just like you say, those numbers there are sadly still very, very, very low, and more
Yeah.
has to be done. If it's okay, I've had some people go on the show recently talk about intimacy coordinations and planning like specific scenes and stuff like that. Is it okay to ask a question about how you approach that scene where unfortunately Tessa has that encounter? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't have an intimacy coordinator on this piece, but
Okay.
I think You know, it's funny because I believe there's definitely a job for intimacy coordinators 100%.
I agree. I agree.
But I think what is just as important is just making the rehearsal room a really safe space. And that's what they were so good at. I mean, everybody on our team, the stage management, like everybody in that room was just the most kind of sensitive, supportive person. And I mean, you know, the team, a lot of the team were women, and I think that helped. But even so, you know, I think that when it came to doing that scene, it almost didn't feel like we needed an intimacy coordinator, because I genuinely felt like by the time we'd got to that, you know, that I felt so much support in that space that it felt safe. It felt really safe.
Absolutely. Well, that's good. I mean, I know it is only still just one person on stage. You know, it's yourself, or it was Jodie, and you know, it's not. If there was a need for another person to sort of guide it, but then again, it is still a serious thing, and you know what you're experiencing and going through and reliving it for
Yeah.
you know, night after night. You know, it's quite interesting.
Yeah. And to be honest, I know that there was like so much conversation about just getting that right, because there's so many, I think, emotions that you go through in that moment, you know, and there's a lot of like, you know, there's fight, flight, freeze, you know, and kind of we did have huge conversations about, you know, each moment in detail and stuff. And so that was really, really helpful.
Yeah, and there's, you know, I think, you know, after that, there's that bit afterwards where she's in a taxi and the rain is just falling and falling and falling on her, and you know, I know because you because we'll talk about this in a bit, but you had one show on Broadway, and did you have a show in the West End?
Yeah. Yeah. One in the West End. Yeah.
Wow. So what was your experience of that scene like directly afterwards? That, so when you're sitting in the cab and you've got this actual water falling on you like endlessly on stage, like what was, as a performer, how did that, you know, you've just been hit with something like that, and then you're
Yeah.
in the afterburn, the aftermath of that. Well, can you sort of describe how that felt?
You know what? It always felt really difficult, that scene, because it's so distracting being soaked.
Mm, mm.
It really is. And so I always it's such a funny one, because I obviously in tech we got to do that a lot. We would always, I mean, I got drenched, you know, several times a day during tech, but which was amazing, because you're like, you know, it needs to be safe and you need to have rehearsed that, definitely, you know, you can't just throw water on someone. But it was, yeah, it was really, I found it quite distracting. I would always not remember how that bit had kind of gone,
Mm.
because it was really, it just felt very I don't know what the word is. Yeah, it almost felt like quite like overwhelming in that moment,
Yeah.
because there's so much going on. Um, but yeah, at least the water was warm.
Oh, I was warm. Okay, that
Yeah,
helps.
they would heat the water.
Could you imagine that was
It was
cold?
like nice. It was like having a nice warm shower.
Well, that's all right. I can't imagine cold water after that would be insult to injury then, wouldn't
Yeah,
it?
I mean that would be bad.
And then what happened next? Did you just run off and then just have a, was there like, I remember my mum saw it and she said, God, like, so after she came off, did she have like a team giving her a blow dry backstage, making her feel better? What happened next?
Yeah, it was just kind of like there was people to help us just get dry and get changed and get back on. Yeah,
Okay, yeah. Well, that helps. That's good. I mean,
yeah,
it was a very quick turnover. That was great.
yeah.
Um,
I'm
I was going to save this question to the end, but actually, I think now is a good moment to bring it up now. I'm sure we're going to talk more about this, but what happened? What, in your opinion, of having played Tessa and worked on it, rehearsed on it, etc., when the play ends, the last line of the play is, "On the face of it, something has to change."
Mhm.
What do you think happens next?
Oh my goodness, that's so difficult. Well, I mean, I imagine the conversation, I mean, I imagine hopefully the conversation that's happening now would be, it would mirror real life, you know, that because she does make that huge kind of speech to the courtroom. And I would like to hope in an ideal world that the judge kind of listened, and, you know, it then went on to a further conversation of, oh, actually, our system is a bit flawed and she had a point.
Yeah.
Maybe let's try and do something about that.
Yeah. Just a tad flawed. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a tad.
Hugely. You know, it was amazing. So let's talk about the preparation. Let's go behind the sings for the next bit. So you talked about how you got the part and everything. So when they called you and said, okay, Dani, the part's yours, you're going to be first cover for Jodie. And you mentioned in the article that even though Jodie was like the first one there, you know, and you have to be there in case something goes wrong, you still have to prepare as if it was you actually doing the show. Because a big word that jumped out in that Spotlight article was preparation is everything. Just prep, which means learning all the lines, which means being in rehearsal, listening to every note the director gives to Jodie. So you're not, I think you make a point that you made notes of what Justin actually said. So tell me about, well, first of all, tell me about how did you learn this thing? Because this thing is enormous.
It really is. It was like learning a novel. I just was like, whoa.
Yeah.
But I basically just broke it down into chunks. I would write it out a couple of times, and then I'd record myself saying it. And then I would go for a very long walk, playing it to myself. And, you know, like, I basically just walked around my local area for 3 months talking to myself. But, but yeah, I found it really difficult. I remember like the first week or so, I was kind of just sitting in my kitchen at the kitchen table, just staring at this script. And I just thought, this is not going to go in. How do I do this? And then, yeah, I kind of got myself into a little routine of just like, okay, I read it, write it out, record it, go for the walk, and then, you know, like really solidify that chunk and then move on to the next bit. And that's the only way. I mean, everyone has their own way, don't they? But that's the only way that worked for me.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I learned last year was how not to I got stuck in this trap many times when I was doing Amdram and things like that. I would learn the lines in like a rhythm, or like in a like I'd put pauses in places where I didn't even need to be a pause because I thought that was dramatic. But it was just me thinking it was dramatic. It was actually a lot of shit. But the thing I learned was how to just, you write all your lines out and literally just learn them like mechanically with no pauses, no breaks, no nothing.
Yeah.
So for example, if I was learning to be or not to be or something like that, I would literally rehearse if I go to be or not to be. That is the question where it is noble of the mind to suffer the things and hours of outrageous fortune. And literally like that, no pauses, no breaks, no nothing, just so the words are all there. Was that something you did?
Yeah, definitely. And then I used to do this really weird thing that I don't know where I got this from, but I would write out in my notebook the first letter of each word.
Okay.
So, you know, it's kind of, if the line was, if you know, then it would just be I, Y, K.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Y. Yeah. So then you'd basically be able to write out, you know, a couple of scenes in one page because you're just writing. But I don't know, it just helped me. But it looks really weird because it looks like I'm writing some kind of crazy code that like someone needs to crack.
Like Morse code or something, yeah. Yeah. No, someone I knew last year did exactly the same thing. She showed me her notes and it was literally just like code on a bit.
Yeah, it looks really odd.
Yeah, I personally that doesn't work for me personally, but if it works for anyone, then it works for yourself. So that's great. Go for it.
Yeah.
But I remember
there was a lot of just kind of like, as you said, there was a lot of just like me just walking around like speed running it, of just kind of I hope you don't mind me asking this, but was there ever a moment where you're on a walk around your area and you get to a specifically like intense moment of the script and you're feeling it, you know the words, you're getting into the character, and then you feel like you're alone, and then someone just like walks past you or cycles past you and gives you one of those looks like yes,
yeah,
you know, it used to happen on the tube all the time because I just would zone out because I'd put my headphones on and then I would be like, just like kind of muttering to myself, and then you're like, oh no.
You're like, and then you remember where you are and someone's giving you a look, and you're like,
yeah.
oh dear. But can you tell me about the moment where, because I imagine because there's so many, I don't know how many sections you must have or chunks you must have had to learn and then put together, and then it's like, okay, now if chunk 1 to chunk 3 is all there, etc. But can you sort of tell me about the moment where you went for a walk and you started, because I think the first line is thoroughbreds, every single one, and then you went that to all the way through to, on the face of it, something has to change. Do you remember that moment where you had the whole thing from start to finish?
I think that's where I used to rope my partner in, and like, bless him, he has heard this script so many times, because I would be working on it during the day, and then in the evenings he would be on book and I would basically do the whole thing. So I think I did the whole thing to him and was like, and the thing is, he would always pick me up on like tiny, tiny, and this was very early on, before we even started on rehearsals, and he would pick me up on it was like, oh no, it was an if instead of an or whatever, and I was like, no, the fact that I've just got through it, like, please, can we just celebrate that? I'm like, it's fine, I'm like paraphrasing a tiny bit,
yeah, but you said your instead of and. It's like, oh, for goodness sake, just leave me alone.
I know.
You try doing this, you try learning. How many pages was it? It must have been about like 50 or something.
It was about 80.
80, Jesus.
I think so, yeah.
Wow.
I know, it was nuts.
80-page monologue. Because I did a one-man show for my final project last year. It was only half an hour, so not near as long as Prima Facie. But I think one thing I learned was that it was just keeping the lines there all the time is just, obviously that's the most important bit, but it was quite difficult for me to just sort of switch my brain off and just go, okay, well, I know all the lines, now I just need to experience it.
Yeah.
I mean, how did you sort of get into that zone?
I think it's hard, isn't it? No matter how much you do it, even I think I was even more worried about the lines the second time round when we went to New York, because I don't know, there's that little kind of devil voice that goes, but do you really know it? And you're like, I think so. Yeah, go away. But I think when I would feel anxious like that, and if that voice kind of was creeping in, then I would just go for a walk and do a full line run and be like, okay, yeah, it's still there. And then you're just kind of like, no, I know it. I've just got to trust, there might be, but you never know what's going to happen on stage, do you? It's like a million things could happen. I'm like, I could fall off a table, or like, so I think a lot of the difficulty in all of theatre acting is, apart from learning the lines and thinking that you might forget them, is trusting that if things go wrong, it's not the end of the world. And it's just kind of like, it's fine, it's live theatre, things will go wrong. And then what I think, once you like free yourself of that fear, it actually becomes more enjoyable. I mean, it's still nerve-wracking. I'm not saying I don't get nervous. I really, really do.
Of course.
But I think, like, yeah, there was a part of me that to get through this job, I had to embrace that fear 100% and just be like, okay, what will be? And,
How do you embrace that fear, particularly on this level, like a one-person show?
You know what? I don't really know. I think that a lot of, I think I feel differently. I know it sounds a bit weird, but I feel differently about it since having kids. Okay. Because it seems, I don't know, there's just like bigger things in life, than if you mess up your lines in a show. It's like, who cares? But yeah, I used to watch lots of episodes of Blue Planet that were really, because you just think, in the grand scheme of things, it's that fine balance by you have to kind of care enough to do the work and do it really, really well, and make yourself think like, this is huge, you need to really work hard at this, but then at the very last moment you have to be like, this doesn't mean anything. Like, it's a weird one to get your head around.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. But let's talk about. So I want to get on to New York. So and you mentioned in your article about one particular night, and I think you mentioned how the role of an understudy, like there's a lot. You said in the article, there's a lot of time waiting. There's a lot of time just seeing if do they need me tonight? Do they need me tomorrow? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? There's a lot of waiting around. There's many bonuses, but you said how it can get a bit lonely sometimes, and it's all like that. Except for one night that you mentioned in New York, there was a Canadian wildfire incident which spread across to NYC, and Jodie gets 3 minutes into a show and she can't do it. She can't breathe properly, and then suddenly you're in the dressing room and they're like, Dani, we need you now. And so you're hoisted downstairs and just go, all right, go. And it's like, tell me about that night.
It was, it all happened so quickly, when you're just kind of like, it's one of those moments where you're just like, okay. Kind of really naively, I just I was quite relaxed on that day. I hadn't really put two and two together and thought that the wildfire would ever affect us, which I think none of us had really thought about. So it was really weird because I went from being like, oh great, show's started, I'll just go and chill out. I just I wasn't on high alert by any means. And then the next thing I know, I was just kind of like, okay, I'm getting ready and going on. But I had to have some serious words with myself before going on, of just kind of to kind of calm myself down. But to be honest, we had the most amazing team that I kind of felt like it wasn't just me going out there. And we had this amazing company manager called Georgia Bird, and she is just an incredible human being. And she stood on the stage with me before, we restarted the show, and, just said to me, look, if you go out there and it's, you're finding it difficult to breathe, or if you have any problems at all, we stop the show and we cancel the show. It's absolutely fine. Like, you don't have to, and I just felt really supported, I guess, by everyone. I didn't feel a pressure to have to, pull this amazing performance out of the bag. And I just thought in that moment, I guess I just thought, well, I'm just going to go for it and we'll see what happens. And that's all you can do, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember anything about the performance at all? Because I think when you're in that mode, you just kind of, you're doing it. And then suddenly it's over and you're like, wait, did that really just happen? And you're just like,
the only thing I remember is in the very beginning, near the very beginning of the play, I think the blocking changed a bit from the West End version. I was putting the kind of collar on, and I couldn't get it done up, and I tried about 3 times, and I just thought, oh no. I don't know, maybe my neck swelled with the pressure. I have no idea, but I couldn't get it done up. But I just remember a kind of moment in my, when something's going wrong and you kind of just have the like, fuck it moment. I just kind of was like, right, well, I'm just going to go for it now, because I just thought, right, that's it. Like, it's done, it's gone, just, move on.
Yeah.
So it kind of gave me a bit of a drive in a weird way that something wasn't going my way.
And, do you remember that moment, I think, towards the end, because, you put the file back in the wall.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to say. And then you hear Self-Esteem's music, who I thought also did an amazing job, by the way. So
incredible.
Amazing soundtrack. And then, so the lights are just fading, and then suddenly it goes, and then you're left in darkness. And then just before, do you remember that moment? Just that feeling of, okay, I've done it.
Yeah. It was the most I've never experienced such kind of like relief.
Mm.
Because it's kind of, I mean, doing that show, it's kind of you get on a speed train and then you're just kind of on it. And you don't have time to even think about the next scene or what's coming next. Do you know what I mean? So then, and it's weird because 100 minutes just goes so fast. Like it absolutely flies by in your head. So then when you get to the end, you're like, wow, I can't actually believe I'm here. Because it feels like you've just ran a marathon. I think that's the only way I can describe it. You're just like, I made it. Like I got through. But I was just like, phew.
Right, we're done. We're done. Was there any moment in the show when you did it where was there a least favorite moment that you had, like coming up to it, where you thought, okay, I know, like you're subconsciously thinking, okay, right, it's this bit now, then you're doing it, and you're like, oh, thank God, that's over. Was there any moment there, or was it the whole thing easy?
I don't know.
That's okay.
I mean,
We don't
I
know.
always found it really difficult to actually learn the lines for the sexual assault scene. And I think
Okay.
that like there was some kind of block that was like, no, we don't want to go to that place. That's not very nice. So I just really randomly, that was the trickiest bit of like dialogue to learn,
Hmm.
which was really, it was, I don't know whether that was just, yeah.
It's like your mind protecting you in a way, wasn't it?
Yeah, it felt like that.
Yeah, because I mean, I've got so many ideas that come into my head now. So it's just like different question after different question now. But you know, uh, I can't imagine like the audience reaction to this. Because they've been inundated with stories of people coming forward and sharing their own, events
Yeah,
and things like that, being so brave. Um,
yeah.
what can you? Did anyone come up to you when you did it? Did you have anyone send you anything?
So many people, honestly, you would not believe. We had, I mean, we formed friendships with these women who we
Yeah.
would meet out every night at stage door. Um, a lot of the time Jodie would sign, so a lot of people would wait for her to sign. But during that, we would, have chats with people and people would give us letters. We honestly, I can't even tell you the amount of stuff that came into our green room, especially well in New York and in London. The letters were off the charts, and I can honestly say like we read every single one,
Mm.
and we would talk about them together. And I remember one day when I was walking in when we were on Broadway, and a girl handed me a letter outside, and I went in and we had a quick little chat, and she was like, do you mind if I give this to you? And I was like, absolutely fine. And I went inside and I read it, and I was just so heartbroken by her words that I went back out to find her, and I just said, can I give you a cuddle? And she was like, yeah, of course. And we just had a little like hug and a cry. But it was honestly the people that supported that show and that wrote those letters and chatted to us were just incredible, like the most supportive, lovely bunch of brave humans. Yeah, we honestly met some incredible people.
Mm. I bet. I bet. I mean, the amount of people that came forward. I mean, no, it's probably some of the letters that you had in the green room. You'll keep their stories safe. You won't publish them or anything. But I
Yeah,
remember just hearing stories like they were shown on the news about people coming forward and saying about some things that they knew people who have been through something similar, or they
yeah,
themselves have been through something similar. And I think it's a huge, a really brave thing, to go and see this play, especially as it's well documented before you go and see it. Nowadays plays are going, this play contains references to sexual assault, to abuse, to wherever it is. Anyone who is affected by this should be advised that this is the case.
yeah.
And so many people came forward to see you, of course, and Jodie as well. But I think was there for a moment where you sort of did it? I know you did it once in London and once on Broadway, but when you were performing it or rehearsing it, you were thinking, you were given this amazing opportunity to help so many people. I mean, how did that sort of affect your work?
To be honest, though, I think like at the time when you're rehearsing it, you don't know whether it is going to help people. You're just kind of concentrating on doing it justice. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah,
Telling
of
the
course.
story and telling it truthfully and honestly. And so I think, we were all just completely overwhelmed at how overwhelmed in a positive and negative way, because it was shocking the amount of women that said, that's me. I am one in three. I relate to this. It was harrowing, the amount of people. But then I remember this one woman who wrote to us the first time round in London. And I think it was the first time that she'd seen the show, and I think it inspired her to actually talk about her own experience. And she then came back to see the show again in Broadway, having had a year of therapy, and was in a completely different place. And she wrote to us again saying, it's transformational, like what this play has done for me. But now she was like, I'm the person in the audience watching the other women, comforting them and supporting them like someone did me at that time. And it's just, it's amazing, really. But no one ever, I don't know, you don't know that it's going to have that impact.
Yeah. Well, you have made that impact to so many people. And I think, you walk away feeling, I mean, well, I'm going to say, you must be really proud of what you've done, in this, being a part of this, and what you've done to help so many people.
I mean, I'm proud of this team. Jodie is the most extraordinary actor, and to go out there, I don't know how she does it. I did it twice and I was like mentally exhausted. And she was doing it night after night and matinees, and and still just giving it her absolute all every single time. And honestly, it completely inspired me, and so many people in this team inspired me. Like Susie is, every time I talk to her, I'm just like, wow, you are just the most incredible human ever. And she's
Yeah.
just so insightful and knowledgeable and passionate about change and the power of theatre, and that art can change the world. And the whole team have just kind of, it's been such a beautiful experience.
Yeah. But you performing Tessa in London and Broadway, that audiences, sorry, that you had, they've, I'm sure you've done so much to help them, because you never know who's in that audience who probably never got in touch.
I mean, and so many people did get in touch and said like lovely things. And I was just thrilled that I got to play that part, because it's just so important.
Yeah. Amazing. What was it like at the Pinter? Because, how does it compare to Broadway?
Well, to be honest, on Broadway, we were at the Golden Theatre, and it was beautiful. It had a very London theatre vibe to it, because it was a similar size to the Pinter. So I think it holds about, I don't know, maybe 800, 900. So it didn't feel wildly different, to be honest, apart from the Pinter's like a bit taller and narrower, and the Golden was kind of like more on like two levels, and they felt a bit closer. But they were both insanely nice theatres with incredible teams inside. Like the most welcoming buildings I've ever been in.
Because
everyone really invested in the play, like everyone who worked in that building just welcomed us with absolute open arms. And I made friends for life in like both of those buildings. So it was amazing.
Wow. I mean, it sounds like an incredible job to be a part of,
I know, I feel so lucky. I know I'm going to be disappointed now forevermore.
Okay, so it's a question for you. So, I was going to say hypothetically, but it could happen. So I'm just going to throw this out there. So you get a phone call. Susie Miller calls you up, and the whole creative team, same people, Justin, what was his name? Justin Miller, was it? Sorry,
Uh,
was it practice? Justin Craig.
now I've had like brain freeze.
Okay, all right, okay, sorry,
Justin Martin.
Justin Martin. Sorry, mate.
Miller really like threw me off there.
Yeah, sorry, Justin Martin. Sorry, pal. Don't have me whacked. So Justin, Susie, James Bierman, everyone gets back in touch with you. Says, "Okay,
Yeah.
Danny, we're going to do it again. Are you in or out?"
As an understudy.
No, as the main girl. You're Tessa. 8 shows a
Oh
week.
yeah, of course I would.
Yeah,
I would 110%. Yeah.
yeah. But if they offered you as an understudy again, would you have that experience again?
If it was exactly the same team, I think probably yes.
Okay, you
I
would.
think
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, it's hypothetical, so it's all good. Yeah, but if but the point is, if the opportunity came around to be Tessa again, but yeah, you'd say yes.
Oh, I'd love to. I would absolutely love to. I think, this is another difficult thing about being an understudy is, I've only kind of performed it 3 times with an audience.
Uh-huh.
And I think a lot of the time your performance evolves so much, with an audience over a couple of weeks. And so I would love to be able to have that bit of the journey, which is, just feeling really, really comfortable with it, finding new things within it. And,
Uh-huh.
I'd love that. And to be honest, I'd love more people to be able to experience this play,
Yeah, yeah,
It's happening lots of countries around the world, so lots of people are experiencing it, which is
yeah.
amazing.
I think there's a Spanish version that's just started recently as well, hasn't there?
Yeah, I think there's like a Chinese version. There's so many versions happening at the moment,
Amazing.
which is amazing, which is
Yeah.
great.
Spread the word, guys. Spread the word.
Yeah.
So you mentioned in the article that some understudies, you've heard stories that they've been given tapes or recordings of their actors, of their people they're covering, and they go, "Oh, just do that." And
Yeah.
you're like, "No, no, no. You don't just copy what another person does. You've got to find your own interpretation of
Yeah.
Tessa."
I was terrified that would be what the understudy job was. But I mean, it wasn't at all from my experience. And I was like reassured that wasn't going to be the case. Even in the audition, I think in the casting, they were like, this is how it's going to work. So I knew that I would have proper rehearsals, which was amazing. But yeah, I've heard that people have been given a video of the show and told to just do that.
Hmm.
I know, which is terrifying.
Yeah. They're not only trying to learn lines, but then trying to find another person's mannerisms and stuff. And you're like,
Yeah,
those aren't mine. That's not me,
exactly. Yeah, I know it sounds awful, doesn't it? That's
Yeah.
why, yeah, I don't want one of those jobs.
Okay. No, you won't. You won't, I'm sure. So this is a question about, obviously it's the intensity of the role and everything. So how did you look after yourself? Because you said just now that, you only did it 3 times or twice, once in London, one on Broadway, and you felt really, really drained and just exhausted afterwards. And you're looking at, and just after 2 performances, but, throughout the run and, learning the lines on the walk and on the tube and everything about a very serious topic.
Yeah.
How did you look after yourself, like throughout this, not just like through the performances, but the whole process from the day you first got the script to right up to the last night on Broadway? How do you as a performer look after yourself when you're tackling this material night after night?
I think again we would because we had such an amazing group of girls backstage, there was a lot of kind of like dancing, a lot of music, we would just kind of shake it off.
Take it off, literally.
Literally shake it off. But yeah, I think like physically, and I mean for me, I love doing yoga. That's the only thing that kind of works for me to like switch my brain off. So I just made sure I did lots of that, which really helped. I also drank lots of water. Everyone used to really look at the size of this water bottle.
Wow.
So
That's like 3 liters, mate.
I know. Everyone used to take the piss out of me walking around with my water bottle all the time. So when I was in New York, they bought me like a giant water bottle, which was really funny. But yeah, just looking after yourself, you know, just kind of like drinking lots of water, getting some sleep. Because I just think things can feel a lot worse when you're really tired or run down. And you know, we had, I mean, our stage manager, Georgia, would have all of these like amazing kind of little herbal remedies. So she'd make us this like beautiful kind of like honey spicy tea. And do you know what I mean? There was a lot of that going on, and we'd have a lot of like, yeah, just like lots of herbs and some really nice stuff. So it just felt like, yeah, it was like really easy to kind of take care of yourself, especially backstage. There's just like a ton of, you know, teas and lots of steaming of the old throat.
Yeah, nothing too exotic in the tea, I hope.
No.
I'm joking.
And then obviously, I mean, we had the lovely Kate who was on your show. Who
Kate
was
Godfrey, yes, yeah.
And so she taught us an amazing voice warm up. So I would do that a lot as well, just to kind of warm the voice up, which is really nice. But yeah.
Did you all do it together? Did you do it with Jodie on stage like every night?
No, I would always, I mean, to be honest, I like warming up by myself. I just think that it's such a personal process, I think. I mean, I love a group warm up, I think, when you're in like a big cast. But then even then I would probably go and do my own somewhere else a little bit private, because I don't know, I think everyone has their own little routine and their own little things that they like to do to prepare. And I don't know, I think that's a really like personal thing. And
is that your, if this is not too personal question, what is your routine before you go on stage? Do you have like a ritual? Do you have, what do you do?
I don't really have like ritual, but yeah, I would normally kind of like steam. I'd make sure I've drank loads of water, you know, the day before or whatever, or just constantly. And then I can't remember what it's called, that, you know, the kind of like steam pot thing that every actor has. It's got like a little glass straw on it.
Okay. I never seen
that. Totally get one. It's really good.
I've never heard of that before.
Like Dr. something. And it's kind of like, it's made of like,
I'll write this down. Hang on. What was it called?
It's not like a plastic steamer. It's made of like actual pot. And it has a little rubber kind of like stopper at the top, and then it has a glass little straw.
Okay.
I highly recommend.
Okay, I've just written down China steam bowl with straw, so hopefully that will help. So
I think there's only kind of like one shop in like London that does them. But they're really nice. It's quite like a soothing thing to do.
I'll keep a lookout.
You should. And then, to be honest, I'd always put like maybe one of those like aromatherapy, like lavender things on in my dressing room to kind of just like, you know, make it nice and calm. Just trying to do calming things. Obviously do Kate's voice warm up, because that always made me feel like my voice is ready. And then, I mean, I would always try and do some kind of yoga as well in that day, because then it just makes me feel like my body's ready. So I think you've got to tick off all the elements, you know.
Yeah.
And then I would always have in all of my dressing rooms so far, I've always stuck a picture of Mark Rylance on the wall.
Oh, right. Okay.
Just because, I don't know, looking at his face reminds me of like how brave he is on stage. And I just, obviously he's an incredible actor. And I just would always stick a picture of him on my wall to just be like, you know.
Yeah.
just be brave.
Brave, yeah. Yeah, funny enough, Kate, when we did Kate's episode, she had this big poster behind her in the video, and she, I think that was one of the shows that she worked on with Mark, and I think she always has that in her, like her, I think it's a creative office, but it's in her house, so she has it there to kind of remind herself of that experience and everything, because, you know, she speaks of Mark incredibly highly, as do I, and as do many, many people. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Mark Rylance on the wall. I should start doing that and write that down as well. So Mark Rylance on the wall. Okay.
Yeah. I've actually, I mean, if I could take it with me, I've actually got a signed picture that I got years ago of Mark Rylance's. It's his like really old headshot. Okay. And he looks so beautiful in it. He's I don't know how old he is in it, but he looks like he should be playing Peter Pan. He's just like really young and sprightly. But yeah, he signed it, and if I could take that to every dressing room and put it on the wall, I would, but I'm always scared that, you know, I'm going to break it or lose it or something. So I just always print out a really crappy picture of his face and just blue tack it to the wall.
And do you have like one of those machines, the one that laminates stuff? Do you take that with you as well? It's about this long, and then you just put it underneath there.
I should do.
Yeah, just keep it nice and fresh, but then you can.
That's what I need, a laminated Mark Rylance to put to take with me.
Yeah, so and then it's easier to blue tack on the wall as well. It doesn't rip the paper.
It is.
So you put that up, and then it's like it comes off easily, and a little, you know. Oh, what are we talking about? Blue tack. That's crazy.
I know, but making your dressing room like a nice kind of environment, I think, is important. You know, I mean, it's difficult when you're sharing. You can still have your own little space, but I think that's part of the routine as well. You know, it's like I'm a bit kind of, I loved, you know, kind of decorating my dressing room and just putting everything like in its place, and just not, you know, it I don't know, there's something really nice about that. Yeah,
I hope you don't mind. I'm getting this image now of yourself. Like someone walking into your dressing room in West End or on Broadway. You walk in, you've got like this china teapot in the corner. You've got like incense smoke around the place. You've got Mark Rylance on the wall. You've got Blue Planet on your laptop just coming through, and just everything between. But to be honest with you, I'm not taking the piss or nothing. But I can imagine walking in. I can imagine walking into that dressing room and just feeling an oasis of calm, and that everything's going to be okay.
Yeah,
that's a dressing room I want to be in. So yeah,
exactly. That's what you need.
Yeah, I'm going to steal all those ideas from you. If you don't mind.
I know, it's funny, isn't it? Because it's so different for every single person. Like I know actors that are kind of like, whoa, yeah, like need to kind of be all hyped up before going on, but I'm a bit more like, you know.
Yeah. No, I'm the same. Oh yeah, I remember when we did our showcase last year. We had I don't know. We didn't like. We all were in the room, all quite quiet, but someone put like sounds of the ocean on. You know, like those 10-hour videos you find on YouTube, and Spotify. They just put it on this little speaker, and the whole just like hearing the sound of like ocean waves and everything through the room. It helped enormously, and I cannot describe why, other than it just made us all feel really, really calm and relaxed. Yeah. And then suddenly all these nerves went out the window. Like we weren't worried about our lines. It just helped, I think.
Yeah,
and
I can imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. So stay calm before a one-person show. Yeah.
Stay calm, kids.
Stay calm, kids. It's all good. Just got one. You mentioned about Mark Rylance there, and you know, Kate spoke of him on the episode, spoke very highly of him, and I've listened to shows. I think Denise Goff did this thing where she met him when she did People, Places, and Things, and he talks about the derobing afterwards, because when you come off stage, you're still in that world, and imagine you're still in Tessa's world of everything that's happened. But he said, no, you've got to leave it with the audience. You've got to sort of leave it with them. And I remember I went to see him in Doctor's, I can't pronounce it, but Semmelweis recently, which is at the Pinter right now.
Yeah, I went to see it.
Yeah, I thought he was amazing. As always, he's Mark Rylance. So I remember at the end, I noticed that when he did his curtain call, he just did this to the audience. He just went like that.
Like, that's for you.
Yeah. And he took his bows and just went.
I love that.
Yeah. And I remember hearing that he leaves it with them. When I saw that, I thought, oh, okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
He actually physically does.
He does. He leaves it with you to sort of make up your own minds, or saying, here's our story. And there you go.
Yeah.
And I imagine you did that. You just in amazing quantities with that and Prima Facie. They said Prima Facie again. There's Prima Facie. Oh yeah, that's another question. So we say Prima Facie, not Prima Facie, or Prima Facie, or some people call it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's a tough one. It's I've heard every single version of, but I think we decided as a company that we were doing Prima Facie.
Prima Facie.
Yeah. Although it might sound different in my accent, I don't know.
Uh,
Prima Facie.
Prima
Prima
Facie.
Facie.
Prima Facie. There we go. Prima Facie, guys. You heard it here. Kate corrected me as well, but hey, it's all good. Cool. I just got a few more things for you today, Dani. Just a couple more questions for you. You mentioned it. You mentioned again how, and I think the producer James Bierman did this wonderful thing you mentioned in the article again, but how he put every cast and crew member's name on the poster when he went to Broadway. And you said that some of the crew, backstage crew, had been there for years. They'd never had their name on a poster before.
Yeah.
And I think that adds to what you've talked a lot about today, is like the community and the trust and the care that you will build up together. And that's an amazing touch.
I know. I mean, he did the same in London as well, but I think
Okay.
for some reason it kind of, I mean, it meant the world to everyone in London too. But on Broadway, yeah, I just remember just having so many conversations with people and they were like, this never happens. You know, they've worked in that theatre for so many years and shows come and go, and it's just like they're kind of not, you know, not part of it, but they're a huge part of it.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, it's just so important. I just don't understand why everyone doesn't do that. It's so important, and it just makes for a brilliant, you know, company atmosphere and a really supportive, strong team. And, you know, why would you not want that on every single show that you're doing? At least try to strive to get that, you know? It makes such a difference.
It makes a huge, huge difference. And I think, yeah, it's like that when everyone's a team, you know, like as the cliche goes, there's no I in team.
Yeah.
You know, everyone works together, and it creates a huge bonding atmosphere. And I just want to just sort of like just sum up a quote of yours from the article where you say that the whole experience was transformational for my confidence on stage and my well-being off stage. And I think which shows that if something's good behind the scenes, then it's going to be good on stage.
Completely. I think knowing, because you know that these people are in the wings when you're on stage, and although you're not thinking about it, just knowing that they have your back no matter what happens. That's what I mean. You don't feel like you're out there by yourself. It's kind of like, this is what we're doing together and it affects us all. And, you know, everyone's working really hard at their job, and everyone's job is equally important and valid. And do you know what I mean? And this also, that story particularly, like it affects us all. You know, there's one actor on stage telling the story and going through the motions, but there's a stage manager sitting in the wing watching that every night. That is really hard, you know, and like that's, yeah, I think it just makes such a difference. It really does. And I'd never experienced it to that level before, of just how much that can really boost your confidence and make you feel just really supported and secure. And I just never, and I think with this piece in particular, that was just invaluable to me. It just meant the world because it was just so helpful. And yeah.
Fantastic. Amazing. I just got two more questions for you, Dani, today. So, before I do, let me just say thank you for your time. This has been one of my favorite conversations.
Listening to me ramble on. Sorry, I feel like I'm like, blah, 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 blah.
No, you talk as much as you want, and it's fascinating listening to you and just hearing everything you say. I mean, it all has worth. You're not rambling at all. So just thank you for that. Just two more things. First of all, I remember sort of for the first time having done my training and done a character, we did a play at drama school. Then when you leave that character behind, I sort of had this weird, I think Mark Rylance was in my head again, but you sort of leave it with the audience, or you say, oh no, sorry, it was more Richard Armitage, really, like when he did The Crucible, like he left, he sort of had this spiritual thing in the shower after a show saying, thank you for coming to visit me again. And then, but don't go too far, I need you tomorrow night. But But on the last show, obviously, I know you've only got to play it twice, but I'm sure you made a huge impact in London and, of course, on Broadway as well, from what you've talked about today. So when the spirit of Tessa came to you, or like the essence of her, or whatever it is you want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
and it may come back in the future and everything, but what do you say to like the essence of Tessa or the spirit of Tessa going forward? Having she's been through all that, what would you say to her? Sort of like for the next stages of her life. Now you leave her at the end of the play, and what do you say to her after she leaves you?
Oh gosh, that's hard. Well, I mean, there's a line in the play, um, at the very end of the play, that her mum comes over to her and says, "Come on, love."
Mm.
And I just think that just, I don't know, that can be kind of received in so many different ways, that I think if I was to see Tessa, meet her, that's what I think, that's what I would, that's what, do you know, it's kind of,
Hey.
it's endearing, but it's almost kind of energized. I don't know. It's kind of, it's just like a really lovely, warm support of just like, come on, you can do, like,
We can get through this.
we can get through this. Yeah.
Fantastic. And finally, last question for every guest. You might have answered this already, but I don't know if there'd be a different answer at all. But what's been an experience or experiences you've had in your career up to this point that you're never ever going to forget?
Ooh. I mean, I think it has to be either Broadway or the West End with Prima Facie, like it has to be that moment. I never in my wildest dreams imagined I would ever be able to stand on a stage in either of those theatres and do a one-woman show. So I think like both of the feelings at the end of those performances, I will remember forever.
And there you have it. Fantastic. Where to follow on from that, really. Dani, thank you so much for today. This has been an amazing conversation, and thank you for being so open about the play, about its topics, and for your experiences. And I look forward to your debut as Tessa going forward, as eight shows a week, and
probably won't be able to get through it.
You'll be great, I'm sure. But not just Tessa, but I look forward to more work you're going to do in the future, and in London and across screen and everything. And I mean, you've done some incredible work already, and I can tell it's just going to be amazing for you going forward. And I can't wait to see what more work you do. So
thank you so much. You too.
Oh no, thank you for today. If you just hang on, I'll finish the recording. I'll say goodbye to you one-to-one. But wow, what an episode! This has been so much fun. I don't know what to say.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dani. Thank you so much.